Hey everyone, this is David. Welcome back behind the velvet rope. Let's just get right into it today because we are joined by the one, the only Mr. Chris Baker.
Hey, how are you?
How are you? What is going on? How is life in LA today?
Life is good. It's finally warming up again. I got my puppy right here sleeping to the side, and he's not going to bark, I hope. So I think we're doing really good today.
Listen, if he barks, that's okay. We allow that. We allow screaming babies. We allow barking dogs. We allow everything here today.
The work from home lifestyle. Yes, absolutely.
And I'm so glad that it's warm there because I'm in New York and it's literally disgusting and freezing. And we're having a snowstorm in 2 days. And it's a winter here, my friend.
Yeah, come out and visit. My parents are in New York as well, and so are my sister and my whole family. And they're just like, I was like, oh my God, it's 60 degrees today. Brr! And they were like, we hate you. We hate you.
You are originally from the Upper East Side, right?
I am, yes, in Manhattan.
So you grew up on the Upper East Side and the city.
I did, yeah. It was very Gossip Girl, Cruel Intentions, but without any of the fun. I just was buried in my head in extracurriculars, and like a good little gay boy was just trying to get the best grades and make sure no one was mad at me or anything. Yeah.
I was just gonna say that sounds very Gossip Girl of you. And I have a lot of friends that grew up on the Upper East Side and they're just like they have stories to tell. But
Yeah, it was, I mean, they made it seem a lot more glamorous than for me it was, but I found out many years later that all of these kids were doing drugs and going into rehab and being abandoned by their parents and having all these parties in New Jersey or something. And I was just like, oh, really? Well, I wasn't invited to any of that. So
I totally get it. I was a gay boy in Connecticut and same thing. I was like, I'm just gonna bury myself in my studies to like avoid life at the moment.
and
Yeah.
look at us now connecting. Look at how we're doing. This is I prefer our path. I prefer our path.
You and me both. We didn't peak in high school.
No, thank God.
So even though you were from New York, you figured like I'm serious about this acting writing thing. I want to move out to LA. That's my path.
Yes. The best thing about this movie is that I think the is that it really could have taken place anywhere, but I think that I was brought out here originally because I was in a band, and we were doing shows out here a lot, and it was really fun and crazy. But then I fell back into improv, and I studied film in college, and so I was always going to end up here.
What type of music was your band?
Was how do I describe it? It was very like ooh like Tove Lo, kind of like a like dance pop with some rock. And yeah, it was around 2013, and that's when that whole EDM craze was like kind of cresting, and we were trying to ride that wave.
I love it. I could picture all of this.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to talk about this movie, The Estate. But before we get there for a second, were you ever in? Because I know you were in like The Catch. I read your IMDb, and that was a
Yeah.
great show, by the way. That was a
It was a
great
good show. I played a Mormon who joins an orgy. Yeah, that was really that was fun on
Well,
ABC.
well, they describe right on ABC, but like Shondaland, like who doesn't love Shondaland?
No, it's impossible not to like those shows.
Scandal to me was one of the best shows that's like ever existed in the history of
Absolutely.
television. And I'm
Absolutely.
still that person that watches Grey's Anatomy. So there you go.
You and all my girlfriends. I'm intimidated because I think it's just so much. So the time commitment, I feel like I could have invested at like the beginning of COVID, but now, unless this goes on for another 2 years, I feel like I just can't commit myself to whatever 17 season is it is or something.
It's a lot. And like, I'm such a purist with TV shows. I'm like, no, you cannot start. Like friends always ask me, can I just start? And I'm like, no, you
No,
cannot
yeah.
start, you know.
I agree, but on the other side of that, it's bad because a lot of times people are like, well, the first 3 seasons are awful, but right now, boy, is it good. And you're like, well, what do I do with that information? And can I read recaps? They're like, no, you have to start from the beginning. So
Right. You're like, please don't tell me that.
yeah.
I feel like, no, but I feel like with The Estate, like 2021, 2022, like, Chris Baker's kind of having a moment in Hollywood, right?
Yes.
Like
The Estate, which I wrote and starred in, which is available on Hulu right now, which we are so excited about. It's finally on a streamer. It was in theaters for like a hot minute, but now it's on Hulu, and we're just over the moon. So yeah.
So I saw it and I thought it was great, but just for a second, humor the audience and tell us what it's about for those who haven't seen it.
It's about a bunch of rich people killing each other for their inheritance.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of naughty gay sex and blood and some very inappropriate humor because they're all horrible people. And it's a really wild, fun 90 minutes. Yeah.
Where did you, because I got like a Cruel Intentions vibe from this a little bit. Like,
yes,
yeah.
Wild Things. There's some John Waters in there. We really took all of these influences that we really loved, and the director of the film, James Kapner, and our producers, and everyone came together and just wanted to make such an entertaining ride,
So where did this idea come from? I mean, I know you grew up on the Upper East Side, but where did this
it is
all come
not
from?
based on a true story. It's actually, it's loosely based on Erika Girardi and Tom Girardi. But no, that was a bad joke. I feel like it was just always something that when I thought about where we are in the culture, it seems like people are less and less religious, and people really are religious about politics almost, but I didn't really want to touch politics. I did that with a web series, and I was like, it feels very dated now. Those things just kind of don't have the perennial quality. And I think the thing that people, no matter who you are, whatever race or class you are, whatever, the thing that you worship is money. And the thing that everyone expects and respects is money. Poor people respect money, rich people respect money. And what would people do in this day and age, in this economy, in this world, for money and fame and recognition? There isn't much people wouldn't do when you're not, well upstairs.
I totally agree. That's why I love this. These are the topics I love talking about. Like no, it's true. I always talk about like fame is like the most addicting drug of all. And like,
yeah.
If you take like 100 people that don't have money and say you have a choice, you want fame or money, like I think 99.9% will say money. And then you have a bunch of people with money that will say, I want fame. Well, that's easy. Of course you want fame because it's the one thing you can't buy.
Yeah.
These topics are so interesting to me.
It's really wild, and I think that the way that people feel right now about the economy, people just keep saying like the stock market's going crazy, and we actually avoided a recession with COVID, and yet all I see is for lease signs, and everybody seems to be like, why don't we still have healthcare? And people are still dealing with closures and working from home and being sad about that, and childcare. And to me, it's like, well, if you were offered this opportunity and this really sexy guy came along and told you, well, I could kill the person that could give you all your money, I don't know. I think a lot of people would say yes. And that's what this movie explores.
It's so interesting. Now, did you see my face light up when you said like this was loosely based on Erika and Tom?